Dr. Robert Saul with us. He is an amazing author and has done amazing things. So welcome, Dr. Saul.
Oh, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here with y'all.
Well, we're excited. I was telling Doug this morning when we were talking, I wish I would have read your books before my kids were teenagers.
It's not too late. They're still going to grow up and have children, and they're still going to be your kids for a long, long time.
That's a good point. Doug. We didn't think about that.
No, my children have three grandchildren to me, and you know what? It's such a pleasure to have grandchildren because you play with them, you hold them, you make jokes, tickle them, and all that, and then you hand them back and say, "Okay, it's all yours." But there's so many good things, though. I think we're going through a time right now where things are changing so much, especially as far as like young people trying to adapt to society and all those sort of things, and all the the devices, all the electronic, the Zoom, the iPhone, all those sort of things. It's not the life that you and we lived. It's totally different. And so to be able to talk to your grandchildren even on a level that they can understand, it's tremendous.
I forgot to tell you, Doug, that Bob grew up in Chicago.
Well, were you on the east, west, north, south?
I was in suburban North Shore brat.
Okay.
And so, yes, I was a Chicago Bears fan, but I have to admit, I was in the Johnny U era. So Johnny Unitas had my heart.
Sure.
Back in the 60s. But my dad took me to a game at Wrigley Field in 1960.
Wow.
When the Dallas Cowboys had their inaugural season. And I didn't know you could get so cold going to a football game. It was
You know what it is? And, it even got worse. Wrigley Field is one thing, and that's close to the lake. But, you have Soldier Field sitting right on the lake. And I really believe in Chicago, for probably a mile of being on the edge of the lake, the weather is different. It's colder because the water is colder, in the summertime. On the other flip side of it, when it's frozen over and you just have a wind coming across it, it's devastating. And I will never forget the games that we played, the Bears played at Soldier Field. Teams like Miami Dolphins would come in, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That was it. The moment we saw them, they had all kind of jackets and hats and earmuffs. They could not play in cold weather. And we usually beat them every single time because, that's something you just have to live with. You have to get used to it. If you're in 60, 70 degree weather and all of a sudden you're dropped in Chicago at O'Hare Airport, it's not going to be a good day for you.
Yeah.
Cold weather. Well, I grew up in Minnesota, so I get that 100%. Well, Dr. Saul, I'm just so, I was reading your newsletter that you sent out today. I think it just came out today, talking about a village and how it takes a village to raise children. And talk a little bit about that, because I agree 100%.
Well, one of the things I've learned on my journey here as being a physician and being a child advocate and as being a parent, that one of the most important things I think the role of parenting is to raise our children to be good citizens. Oftentimes we want our children to be happy, but I think we have it backwards if we're shooting for their happiness versus their role as being a good citizen. Citizens take care of each other. Happiness to me is then a blissful secondary side effect. So if you're a good citizen, you understand the concept of a village, that it takes a wide range of services to make a difference in terms of the lives of children. Yes, the nuclear nurturing is from a family, but a lot of families, unfortunately, in today's society are broken and need help. So we need to be there to help them. We need to be there to help them with educational experiences, healthcare. So many children don't have good healthcare, recreation facilities, law enforcement, and just faith, whatever faith they follow. It doesn't have to be, to me, it doesn't have to be a specific faith. I just want them to be faithful to themselves and to their fellow humanity. So it really does take a village. A lot of people have sort of poo-pooed that, said, oh, that's socialism. I think if we think of raising our children as not a village, then I think we're doing that to our own detriment and fault going forward.
How did you come up with, because you've written like 6 different books. How did you get on this path?
Well, only 4, but thank you for 6. Well, it really was a very interesting. I started pediatric practice in 1979. And after 14 years, I realized I haven't been paying back to the community like I should. I've had my nose to the stone. I've been working hard. But have I been helping the broader community other than what I'm just doing in my own little clinic? And the answer was no. I went to her a talk that had a profound impact on me ever since. This was in 1993. So almost 30 years later, this has got me going on a journey. And this speaker said, for anything that happens in your community, 12 words: I am the problem, I am the solution, I am the resource. And so what he means by that is you need to incorporate everything that's going on in the community, take personal ownership in it. It's not their problem. It should be our problem or my problem. So I need to be part of the solution. And to do that, I need to devote my resources to it. So I said, wow, but I must admit, it took me 2 or 3 months to sort of really internalize that. What do I do? And it wasn't obvious to me right away, but I got involved. And I was even sort of smugly involved. I'm a good person. I'm a good citizen. And then my next epiphany was April 20, 1999. 2 children, I call them children, teenagers, walk into a high school in Littleton, Colorado, massacre 13 people, and kill themselves. You and I know that as Columbine. And I asked myself, could that happen in my community? And the answer was yes. What have I done to make a difference? Introspectively, and the answer was not enough. So I put pencil to paper, and we used to do that back then. And I came up with like 5 steps to community improvement. And I wrote over the next 12 years, over 160 op-ed articles to the local newspaper about those 5 steps. And that's what got me going on this journey.
Wow.
Glad to go over those 5 steps, but I'll pause and let you all get a word in edgewise.
Well, I was just thinking, Doug had a whole bunch of Burger King franchises. So Doug, I know you raised a lot of those kids that worked with you, because you would always say that you became friends with their family. So yep. Doug understands that village, right?
Yeah, you do. I mean, it really is. Truthfully, when you're in the food business, you really have to reach out to all of your employees and all of your customers also. And so I really felt like, just like you mentioned, Doctor, I felt like I was on a mission every day to improve not only the relationship that I had with my employees, but also my customers. And more than just throwing food out a window or over a counter at them and saying nothing, just giving them the food. And I always tried to say something that was appropriate, in terms of maybe something clothing they had on, or, something else I noticed about them, and ask a question and have a little bit of dialogue rather than just throwing food at somebody and saying, get out of here. I need to wait on the next guy behind you. And, I don't know, I felt like the employees that I had that were younger, that were yet to go to college, when they would come back from college and stop in and say hi for no reason at all, or just look me up, I said, you know what, I did something good. That talk we had, or message that we had during the time that they were there working, and I would just talk about all kind of different things, about athletics and, working hard every day and just looking at it step by step, rather than, just staring, in the future and saying, this is what I want to be. I felt like in my life, I put down a stepping stone of steps that I had to go and achieve before I ultimately was going to be able to succeed, either as a professional athlete, as an entrepreneur, an owner of 20 Burger Kings, and, real estate. So I also felt like, you can graduate from a school, a high school, a college, a master's degree, but you never stop learning. And that was the point I kept trying to make to people that I associated with. You never, ever stop learning. You can learn something new every day. I don't care how many licenses are on your, graduates, or on your wall. It doesn't matter. There's still things out there that you need to look to know. Maybe not necessarily scientific facts, but relationships between each other. And I have to tell you, just like yourself, doctor, I feel like where our country is right now in how we're treating each other, it's shameful. And, there's no dialogue there whatsoever. And, everyone feels like, somebody's done something wrong with them, so they should be entitled or somehow rewarded for just being here. And, that's not the case. You have to work and achieve. And I think, sometimes all that hard work and achievement, though, when you look back at it, it's something you actually embrace because you did something that nobody else, or not nobody else, but other people, the other ones that did it, were with pride and proud of the work that they had accomplished. And I think sometimes now, being less than excellent is accepted and it's okay. And I think that's wrong. I think we should always be achieving.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about lifelong learning because of the 5 steps that I talked about to community improvement. Number 1 is essentially lifelong learning. Number 1 is learning to be the best parent you could be. And I chose those words carefully because parenting is a constant learning experience, even for your older children, Megan.
Yes, it is.
And the best parent you could be. Not everyone has the same abilities. Not everyone has the same circumstances in terms of maybe single parents or illness in the family or socioeconomic challenges. So my job as a pediatric professional was to help enable them to be the best parent they could be. Early in my career, people would come in and say, well, doc, what do I do here? And that was easy. I knew. I was smart. I'd gone to medical school. I'd been trained. I could tell them. Well, it took me 40 years to realize that my job was not to tell them. My job was to help enable them, to help empower them, and to many ways build a trusted relationship, help gently peer behind the curtain and help them be the best parent they could be. The second step was get involved. You have to get involved in your community in some way, shape, or form. And so there's so many different ways you can do that. The third step, which is related but different, is stay involved. Sometimes it's tough to stay involved, to sustain that involvement that makes a difference in your community and shows your children how important it is to get involved. Fourth step, I think, is the most intuitive, but as you were saying, Doug, maybe it's the most difficult in today's society: love for others. We seem to have forgotten that it's so easy to belittle and demean and just bash people than embrace them, recognizing our shared humanity. And the fifth step, I think, is the most critical because we have done poorly with is forgiveness. We need to learn how to forgive ourselves. We need to learn how to forgive others, and we need to learn how to do it now. So those were the 5 steps that got me going on a journey. And I published a book called My Children's Children, Raising Young Children in the Age of Columbine about 9 years ago, then made a children's book associated with that, did a more scientific book about early brain and child development, and then sort of took a lot of that work into my most recent work talking about conscious parenting. So I find I'm on this 30-year journey now, and I've retired from medicine, but I certainly have not withdrawn from being the advocate for children and for families and pushing hard to get the message out there.
Those are 5 great tips. Those are 5 amazing tips. How do people buy your books? What's the best way for them to buy your books?
On my website, that's mychildren'schildren.com.
Mychildren'schildren.com.
That has all my blog posts on there, the books, my beautiful mug. No. But it's, I must admit, when I retired, I thought, well, I'm just going to, be playing golf and that sort of thing. And I realized that what I thought 20 years prior, that I'm too committed, that I have too much to say. And I think God put me here on a purpose for, yes, I'll play golf, but more than just playing golf every day. He put me here for a purpose to get this message out there and to make a difference in the lives of others. So doggone it, I'm going to do it.
Well, and the knowledge that you have is incredible, absolutely incredible. And it's incredible. People just need to know about it. And that's why we wanted to have you on this podcast, so we can help spread the word and get people to be familiar with all your different books and your blogs and your newsletters. They're incredible.
Well, thank you. Just a brief note about the conscious parenting, because I think the whole point about parenting is being consciously aware of where you are, what your feelings are, what you're doing, what your circumstances are, and where your children are developmentally. Without both of those, you're not doing what you need to be doing. And in the moment, we might make mistakes. Hopefully, in retrospect, we can analyze what we did and maybe make a difference. And I'll give you a personal example. I think my son was about 7 or 8. One night, he said something that really set me off, and I yelled at him. Not one of my proud moments, but I did. And he just turned into a puddle. And then Mom got mad at me for yelling. And then we went into that family meltdown mode. I'm sure neither of you have ever had this.
You're right.
We went into that family meltdown mode where nobody talks, just walks past each other for a couple hours. And later that night, it was time to put him to bed, and I laid down with him. I said, son, I'm so sorry. You did something wrong, but Dad's response was totally inappropriate. I want to say I'm sorry. I want to apologize. That I want us to work on this together going forward. He said, Dad, would you be quiet? I said, why? He said, I hate it when you're nice. So I don't say that to pat myself on the back, but I say that it really is important that you be conscious about what you're doing now and about what you did. So I think for most encounters, for parenting and for life in general, I think you want to pause, assess, and then choose. You might choose the wrong response. So hopefully you have some mechanisms in place to reflect and say, that didn't go well. So I want to do better.
That's awesome. Well, Doug's children are older than mine, but I know that because Doug and I talk about it all the time. Kids are kids forever, right, Doug?
Yes, they are. And, my dad was I don't want to say beat 'em up dad, but everything from knocking over a glass of milk at the dinner table to putting dirt on the carpet after it was cleaned, all resulted in a belt style spanking. And that was very memorable. And I always told myself, I will never, ever do that to any of my children, because I knew what it felt like. Number one, I knew that it didn't really do any good. If I wanted to go ahead and knock a glass of milk over again, a spanking wasn't going to stop me. It was going to take something more than that. But I spanked my son, who's now in the service as an officer. And he just said there was one thing he remembered about life, and it was the time that I spanked him for something foolish, like knocking a glass of something over. And he got up and, I don't know, maybe he said something or whatever. And just in a recent conversation with him over the telephone, he reminded me of that episode years and years and years ago. And I feel like I've got something to make up, because that was truly the wrong response. We could have sat down. I could have told him a story about my dad, and I apologize for having gone through that. And, but, I think, one of the things that really motivated me also was not so much, what I did, but it was what I didn't do. I should have done more and better in situations like that I just let pass by. And I think by not doing anything, you're just as guilty as reprimanding or criticizing your children at that stage. And, just like myself, I don't remember many things now, but I remember that. And I wish I had that moment back in terms of going over it in my response, because it was something that I'll never forget.
Well, and I think forgiveness is really key, because nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. Everybody has days where they get frustrated or whatever you want to call it. But I think being able to say, you know what? It's okay. We're past that now. Let's move forward and keep being positive. You know what I mean? Like, that's my mantra is that's the past. Let's move forward. Let's forgive everybody for what's going on. And let's just make it happen in a positive way.
Yeah. And it's an interesting point, Doug, about the physical punishment. That's why pediatricians are staunchly against that these days. Yes. And because we want to make sure we recognize that children that have been physically punished are more likely to do the same when they grow older.
Yes.
And a lot of people say, well, if you don't do that, you're just coddling them. Well, unfortunately, the risks are the more children that are physically abused, the more likely they are to use physical force in the future. Now, not everybody will, but I use the lung cancer example. Not everyone that smokes gets lung cancer, but it sure increases your risk. The same thing with physical punishment. So that's why we don't recommend it, because we want to emphasize that when children do something wrong, that we still love them. We don't love their behavior. And we want to be sure we're using discipline, because the root word for discipline is disciple, which means to teach. So any behavioral issue that we're dealing with should be a teaching experience, not a punishing experience. But I mean, it's give and take. It's tough.
Yeah. I love that. Discipline a disciple. I love that.
Never realized that. Never until this moment.
I'm going to quote you on that, Dr. Saul. I love that.
Well, I got it from somebody else when I was awake during a sermon.
And I didn't use a belt. I would never, ever touch a belt. When I still put a belt on, I'll be honest with you. I think of what that belt was used for at one time. And I used my hand, my open hand. And maybe because I was a former professional athlete, it may have hurt more than a typical, hit on the butt. But I can't even tell you what I felt like after that. I think I cried that your children were more mature in that situation than you were.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, so I grew up with wonderful, wonderful parents, but my mom had the helping hand, which was a wooden paddle. I had that one time, and I swear I never, ever got it again, because I never wanted to experience that again. But I went the opposite way. Because of that one experience, I was very, I didn't spank my kids. I just didn't, because I just was that one experience when I said something not respectful to my mother. I'll never forget it.
Well, and in the conscious parenting book, I talk about a paradigm that I think is interesting called the parental awareness threshold. When you're above the parental awareness threshold, you're open, you're receptive, you're ready to learn, you're ready to engage and be intentional listening with your children. When you're below, you're defensive, you're right, because I said so, because I'm the parent. Now, the point is we're going to be above and below all the time. The whole point of conscious parenting is just try to be conscious about, say, oh my gosh, I am below the line right now. I'm below the threshold and I need to change somehow. Or in retrospect to say, ooh, that didn't go well this morning as we were getting ready for breakfast, getting ready to go to school. How can I change and make a difference? So that's my whole point of conscious parenting, is sort of using the parental awareness threshold, pausing, assessing, and choosing, and then again, with the goal of raising your children to be good citizens. Happiness is a secondary blissful side effect if you do good work on the front end.
Well, I'm going to get that book and read it, because I can still use that still to this day, because I got a long way to go yet.
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
I'm 3 years older than Doug, and I'm still learning.
Honestly, I try to learn something new every day. I'm serious. And some of those things are still helping me, things that I'm learning, some things that I maybe forgot or maybe haven't used very much, but, it's hard to go through life anymore. I think you'd have to agree with this, doctor, and not have some knowledge about everything. I mean, everybody in this country pays taxes, and their parents, and they're buying food, and, so they have to be economically smart and intelligent, and learn how the tax code works. I'm not saying you have to read the whole tax code, but find out how where your money's going, and at least have an opinion about it and feel like you can have some change if down the road. And but I think to just keep doing the same thing over and over. Like I know my father, he was very affirmative with a belt. And his father also was, that they used that as discipline. So it was just something that was passed down. And I'm proud to say I never hit anybody with a belt in my family or children. Not that I'm proud of that. I mean, that's not some measure of greatness. But I know that my two children have never touched their kids, with a belt, with a hand, anything. Everything is, let's have a conversation. And I think we're much better off under those terms.
As we say down south, you done good.
Well, Dr. Saul, you are incredible and your information is spectacular. Everybody should be getting your knowledge that you have. Tell us again, I'm going to put in the links all of your contact information and the website and everything. And so people can buy your books, read your blogs, but just say it one more time for us. It's
www.mychildren'schildren.com.
Wonderful.
My children's children. That I purposely chose that title because I want to pass on to my children's children. I want to pass on to the children that I've taken care of over the course of my career, and the children that I've advocated on behalf of. So, and I do have a YouTube channel which just has some videos up, but most of the information can be on my website. And I appreciate your promoting that. The Conscious Parenting book is a real simple read. It's really short.
Oh, that's good. That's perfect for me.
It's meant to be one of these kinds of books where you read it and you go, I'm going to keep this handy because I want to refer back to that. And so I hope it fulfills that purpose.
You know what? I'm just to butt in here last. Everything we do in life, we need a license for it, especially if it's a skill or an ability that we have to do and maybe others might be involved. How about parenting? We can go out and get married on a weekend anywhere in the country, I think, and become parents. And all of a sudden, we're married, we have kids. There's no license on how to raise your kids. There's no book or no teaching session. That is one of the most valuable assets this country can have. If every parent had to pass a test for, how to raise a child. And I'm not saying it has to be necessarily religious in nature. How about just the do's and the don'ts? The simple things that you were talking about here earlier. Oh my God, that would make a big difference in people's life. And we do it with driving. We do it with anything. Anything you do in this country, you probably need a license for it. I just think you couldn't get any more important than being married and having kids.
Well, now we have the resource, Dr. Saul.
We used to have civics classes. Girls used to take home economics. Guys used to take wood shop.
Yep.
But we never really addressed parenting.
Not at all.
Well,
not at all. I mean,
it's been really awesome to talk with you. Really awesome to talk with you. You're a wonderful, wonderful man, Dr. Saul.
Well, thank you.
And thank you for spending time with us.
I'd love to come back sometime.
All right. Well, we'll get you back on the schedule. Right now, we're all booked up till mid-January, but there's definitely an opportunity to have follow-up to see how many parents you've helped.
I hope so. And that's my goal going forward.
No, you know what's great about this right now, though? Even if I don't read a book, which is not going to happen, I'm going to read this book. And because you always think, oh, I'm at the very top of the echelon. No, you're not. You don't even know what you don't know. Isn't that true in many things? I read this guy, I go, I didn't even know this. And I'm doing something, right now, people are allowing me to be a realtor or something. And there's something that I needed to know, in terms of the process. And it's obviously so true in life and in parenting children. Because there's so many different things that try to, and the tough part about it is every kid is different. My two children couldn't be different. Number one, they were a boy and a girl, but even their thoughts and their ideas and what they wanted to talk about, it was just so different. So, being a parent is not, it's not an easy task. And
all right. Well, Doug, we're going to read the consciousness book. Okay. We're going to get it right.
I guarantee I'm going to read it.
I'm going to read it too. Well, you guys have a spectacular day. God bless you, Dr. Saul, and wish you much success. And we will get this link out to you, and we'll push it out to our friends and family. And look up Dr. Saul.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, guys, have a spectacular Monday. And thank you for all of our sports and shopping fans that watch and listen to us. We really appreciate you. And if you have a recommendation of somebody you respect and like that you think Doug and I would like to speak with, please always just shoot me an email, m@megaz.com. And I'll put all this information in the links so y'all have it. But you guys have a spectacular Monday. And again, Doug and I are always honored to have you watching and listening to our podcast. So thank you. All right, guys. Well, I'll see you later.
Thank you. Thanks,
Have
Doc.
a great day.
That was fun. Thank you all.
Yes. Thanks, Doc.